Anyway, welcome to our club. I am so very, very happy to have Tom with us. And I know Tom, his official capacity this year is District Governor for 5950. But I know Tom from our days in Edina together. And Tom's claim to fame that I think of you as is the guy that brought in 30 members in 1 year to your own Rotary Club. That number's right, isn't it? Or is that too low?
It's 31.
Oh. And so I invited Tom today because we're a small little club, you know, and we need to think of new ways to grow and expand and bring people here. I think this is a great destination club. It's, you know, it's got a theme. We know there are so many people in our districts that, and in our worlds, you know, that love international travel and are interested in this. And I thought Tom might have some ideas on how we can expand our club. So, Mr. Gump, you may take it away.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for having me here today. And I'm super excited to be here. You know, I've heard about this club for a while, but I've never had a chance to visit. So I think it's great that I have an excuse to do it today. So I put together a little slideshow just to give you some ideas, just to get your brain thinking about how to recruit new members. And so much of recruiting members is actually just thinking about it and concentrating on it. You know, it's a few years ago when we had ORS, there was a video about when you buy a red car, and I know some of you experience this, you just see red cars, right? All over the place when you buy a red car. And I think membership's a lot like that. If we think about it and concentrate on it and focus on it, and you're your best salespeople, the people in this club, because you know all the great things about your club. So I just put together a few little tips that I want to go over. If my slideshow lets me advance. So the first thing I want to talk about is knowing your club strengths. And, you know, there's a lot of strengths to this club. And, you know, every club's got strengths. You know, some strengths could be as simple as you meet in the morning. That could be a benefit to some people who are busy at night. Or people like my wife who are retired don't want to get up in the morning. They might like a noon club. So what would you guys say your biggest strengths are for your club when you're telling others about your club?
You just unmute yourselves and say whatever you'd like to say, guys.
I think that we're online and we can welcome people from anywhere, be it in the United States or be it somewhere else. And we talk about, and we discuss having cultural exchange. I think that's the important thing to our club. I also think, for me anyway, this time of day is the really right time. Before dinner, for us in the Twin Cities anyway, or Minnesota, is a good time.
And you have very welcoming people. You could tell as soon as you come here. I've never been to a club, and believe me, I've been to a lot of clubs. I've never been to one who just everyone introduces themselves and gets to know each other. I mean, that's just wonderful. And you have so many vast experiences that you can share. And a lot of clubs don't have that much experience with, you know, their members. So that's really cool. So one thing when, you know, we were talking a little bit about the year that I brought some people in. The first thing I did was I talked to our members and I said, okay, what classifications do we not have? And I just started with the alphabet and went through A and went down for a few letters. And I said, do we have an architect? And all we had really was just one architect who was retired. So everyone started thinking about, hey, is there an architect? And so my friend Theo here joined. And then I thought, you know, we need a banker. So we actually ended up getting a few bankers. And don't worry, I'm not going to go through the whole alphabet. There won't be a Z for zookeepers. But these are not stock photos. These are actual friends of mine who I brought into the club. And it's amazing, you know, when you have a great club like your club, you just want to share that with all your friends and with your families and with your work colleagues. And it's and when you ask them, they're pretty honored to be asked. But this is, I picked this one for you guys, Lisa, L for landscaper, Lisa. But she was the first exchange student from her little town in Iowa 30 years earlier. And she always wanted to join Rotary and nobody ever asked her to. So she went to my church, I asked her to join, and her husband joined too. She immediately took over our poinsettia sale at Christmas time that goes to polio. and our sale for the plant sale that also goes to polio. So it's interesting. Sometimes people are right in front of you. You just have to ask them. This is Maureen, and she was a friend of mine, and she was a librarian. She still is. And somebody had asked her to join Rotary 10 years earlier, and it didn't work because she had a family and she was busy. But now it's just a perfect time for her. So she's an author, and she brings in a lot of good speakers. So, sometimes just because you ask somebody once doesn't mean that a few years later, sometimes the timing's not right, and then sometimes it is. So I thought it would be good to actually find out why people join and the reason they join and why they stay and things like that. And this isn't particularly to your district, it's in my district, but what I found out when I'm speaking in other states and other places in the world, it turns out that the answers are pretty much the same. So like I said, this was recent in our district, 5950. We asked a few substantive questions and a few demographic questions, and I won't go through all of them. We have about 3,000 people in our district, about 1,000 responded. Not all 1,000 responded to every question. But it's very interesting if you look at the trends and what tells us, and this will tell us who we should recruit because it's the people who are likely to join. And of course, we're not going to go through everything, just the important parts. So how did you first learn about Rotary? It turns out that most people learn about Rotary from a friend, a family worker, and a coworker. And that really makes sense because if you want someone part of your club, you're going to ask people that you like. And it's great when you're president of a club to start bringing in your friends and realize that there's more smiling faces as time goes on through your year, and you just have more fun. Plus, who wouldn't want more members because it gives you more hands to do service projects. It gives you more money for your club fundraisers, more money for TRF, and you get more done. So it's I don't have to sell you because obviously you have me here talking about this, but it just makes it better if you do it. So the main reason for joining Rotary for most people is either business connections, they want to rub shoulders with people of significance to advance their careers, or giving back to the community. Now that's why they join. But if you look at why they stay, they switch. The reason people stay is to give back, not so much for the professional interaction. And friendship is a big one. And let's face it, I could tell from what you guys were saying, lifelong friendships is the reason people stay in Rotary. I mean, most people, when they leave Rotary, it's between the second and third year. And it's because they haven't made those close relationships, or they haven't found out the value of Rotary. And another thing that people like is the four-way test, which is our moral principles and guidelines. So this question's always interesting when we go around and we ask clubs, when's the last time you asked someone to a meeting? Because you really have to ask someone. The personal invite is what really makes things happen. We can advertise on social media, we could put up billboards, we could send out postcards, but people respond to that personal ask. So about half our Rotarians, most of our Rotarians don't ask people to come to meetings. And if you add up these percentages, it would add up to 100%. But, the 10% never brought anyone. Within the past 6 months is only 20%. So we just have to ask people. I mean, that makes sense. And what you could do with your club is you could make maybe once a quarter have a new member day where that's the day where everyone brings someone to the club. Because if you membership's one of those things where we tend not to think about it because we think about where's the minutes from the last meeting, when's our next fundraiser, who's our next speaker, do we have their slideshow? So membership gets to be pushed off, but if you make it a membership day, maybe once a quarter and say, this is the day that everyone's gonna bring their friends, that helps. So that might be something you wanna think about. And really, you're going to see a trend here through this. The things that I'm asking you to do to grow your club and retain your members are really easy, and it's low hanging fruit. And once you get the wind behind your sails and people start bringing people in, it's just going to be a part of the culture of your club, and it's going to pervade everything, and it'll just keep on going. So really, only 50% of Rotarians, and this is a pretty good sample population, have ever sponsored a new member. So you have half the people doing all the work of bringing in membership. Now, when you actually go to clubs and you say, who's your membership champion? It's usually one or two people in a 20-person club. So it's just a few people doing it. Why? Because they think about it and they do it. And it's not that hard for each of you to become a club champion. And, if I would ask you, do you guys have a membership chair? Okay, good. Because the real answer is all of you are membership chairs. You all need to be responsible for bringing people in, because Chris Ann knows a lot of people, and Greg knows a lot of people, and Al knows a lot of people. But if you all do it, it works much better. So, what do you like best about Rotary? So, fellowship, some people like the weekly meetings, local international service, and then this slide also has the four-way test. So if you look at these things, it's people want to be, the fellowship, of course, none of us would leave our Rotary clubs because we have really, really good friends in them. And, once you get those lifelong friendships, you don't want to leave. But in the meantime, people join because they want to do service. That last gray bar at the bottom, the second most popular answer, says local international service. And people want to get engaged and they want to be engaged. People don't join a club just to join a club. Especially this is true with younger people and millennials. They want to join something that's got a purpose. And let's face it, there's a lot of competition for Rotary. If you want to talk, you can go to TEDx. If you want a meal, you could, go to a veterans, organization, a VFW, you could, all kinds of things. So having a passion, and you guys have that. You have that with the youth exchange, with the Rotex. So you just have to share that passion with other people and get people. And all these ideas are flowing into my mind since I was asked to speak. I mean, you can go back to all the host families. And I know in my area, not every host family is a Rotarian. A lot of them just don't have the time to come during the day. But a lot of host families would love to be engaged in a club like this where they could zoom in and zoom out, and there's not a big financial obligation. So that would be a good, I know you already got some Rotex, but maybe host families that aren't Rotarians would be a good target. So keep a list of potential recruits. I see so many times when I go to clubs, someone will visit and then they won't come back a second time and nobody follows up with them. They don't know if they were welcomed or not. And it doesn't have to be a fancy spreadsheet that you update all the time. It could just be a list on your computer or like here on a bulletin board. But it's important because it makes you think about that person. And if you think it's a person who is not similar enough to you where you could carry on a conversation, find someone in your club that's like them. If it's a retired female, maybe there's a retired female that you could assign this person to, and they could follow up and they could have coffee. If you lose one member, bring in two. And this might seem an easy thing to do, and it is an easy thing to do. We had a lady in our club, Sheila Kerrigan, and her husband transferred jobs. So she was head of the ABC, which is a nonprofit down here. And so she left. So I said, I want you to bring your new executive director. That's the position she was vacating. And I want you to bring a board member. So we got two, and they both joined. And that's easy to do. And you could have reduced fees for, we call it corporate fees in our club, and for family members, for spouses, you can do reduced club fees for that. Okay, you have to make it your number one priority. And it's so interesting when you go to a board meeting. When I go to president-elect's training and I talk to the president nominees and the president-elects, this is always everyone's major concern, membership. They're always concerned about membership. But what do we do about it? We don't do a lot about it. I mean, you guys are very good because you asked me to come speak, so you're thinking about it. But when you have your board meeting, do you guys have board meetings?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so if you go to a typical club meeting and you go to their board, which is usually sometimes an hour before the regular meeting, they'll have an agenda, and that agenda will have minutes from the last meeting, financial report, fundraising. Everyone goes around the horn with all their jobs. Membership never comes up. Now, if you ask them, what's your number one priority, they'll say membership, but yet they don't talk about it. They don't do it. So when I was president of my club, I actually had my agenda, and the first number one was list of potential new members, and it would be people who visited the club. And I wouldn't try to do it all myself. That's not a good idea. You could assign these people to other people. And it's so easy to recognize people when they bring a guest. How did our potential member here on the call today, how did they find out about this wonderful club?
Which potential, is it Meredith?
Yes, how did Meredith find out about your club? She's not a potential member. I guess she's going to be an exchange student, but
Right, right. Meredith, you know Olga, who's a member of this club. And Olga worked with Youth Exchange. She's from Southern Minnesota. And so she invited Meredith to just come and meet some people who had done Youth Exchange years ago. So that's how she came to us.
so that makes sense to me. You know, that list that we saw, it's all about that personal ask, that personal connection, and that's not hard to do. And everyone's honored to be asked to be invited to somewhere. Um, and you have to let people know that it's your number one priority. I never liked this picture, but it kind of describes me talking about membership. Um, and you know, it's easy when someone, you know, you could have an award at your club that whoever brought the most guests in over the last year, whoever had the most members, you know, if someone in your club member, like let's say Greg is your speaker from your club, and he says he's going to speak, you can say, and Greg was responsible for bringing in Stephanie or Kirk or Lindy. So anytime one of your club members do this, let's recognize the people who brought them in. It's pretty easy to do. You know, you could keep a electronic board running of who brings in the most members and put a dot next to their name. And then at the end of the year, they win a case of wine or whatever. But just let them know it's important. It's always good to make a list of all the good things that your club is doing. You guys doing a lot of things. This just happened to be a little card we put together for a golf tournament. But when you're recruiting people to your club, they're going to say, well, what kind of things do you do? It's easy if you can just shoot off the list of these are what we did for our local grants this year. And likewise, sometimes they want to know, they want a realistic preview of what are their financial obligations of being part of this. You know, is there meeting requirements, things like that. So if you make a list of those and just have them on your desktop, when people ask you, you could email them off. And I'm not saying you need to have form letters, but just some general language that helps describe your clubs. Um, so if someone's not a fit for your club, I always say they might be fit for another Rotary Club. This is a friend of mine who's going to be our club president next year. And um, he was recommended to me by someone in my wife's club at the Edina Noon. I'm in the Edina Morningside club. And so when I have somebody, I give them the name of 3 or 4 clubs and say, this is kind of might fit you better. And there's got to be a lot of people that fit your club, but let everyone else know you're looking for members. Now that I spoke to you, I know that if anybody is interested in Youth Exchange, I could send them over to your club because they may not be able to attend my club. And so, you know, most of our clubs, when they call it a traditional club, they meet probably Tuesday through Thursday, either at 7 or 7:30 a.m. or at noon. And they usually meet at a hotel or they meet at a country club. And you take my club, for example, we meet at the Edina Country Club on Tuesday mornings at 7:30. And, you know, crispy bacon might be good for me, but I have some friends who will never visit my club because they like to take their children to the bus stop at 7:30. So I'm gonna have to either wait till they go to high school or, or I can introduce them to your club and they could Zoom in because they might have an interest in Youth Exchange or the experiences that Rotex have. So just don't just think about your club, think about other clubs. And whenever you share a member with them, they'll share a member back. It happens all the time. And you have to be persistent with people. These people up here, because they were bankers, and I went to them because I heard their bank was coming to my town for the first time. They didn't have another branch in my town. And they said, well, we'll be happy to join, but we're going to wait until our building is built. So I watched that building, and then, you know, after a quarter, I got in touch with them. Then eventually the branch opened and they came. So you need to be persistent. And constancy of purpose. I think this is important. That's my little house on the left, and that's my church on the right. And I could have put up Snap Fitness on here. I could have put a picture of my office there. But the thing is, if you keep on asking people, you're gonna get yeses. And the first couple, you know, ask might be hard, but I've been rejected so much that it's easy for me now. So, and you know, I put up the house because I was thinking of my neighbor Bob Dylan, who, not the Bob Dylan the singer, he spelled differently, but his name is Bob Dylan. He lives right across the street from me. And you know, I asked him to come, and he says he travels, so he didn't want to join, but he comes to so many of our events now just because I asked him to join our club. He does other things, and he gives to Rotary and things like that. There's a guy at my church who always sat across the way from me, and he always kind of like smile. So I asked him to consider coming to our club, and he couldn't. But every Sunday after that, he'd come over, walk across, and shake my hand because he was so happy that he had been asked. And then when we started our Veterans Club, he actually joined that club because it met at night and he didn't want to meet during the day. So, and you know, this is kind of an embarrassing story, but my friend who asked me to join Rotary is a guy named Brad Olson. And he works out with me 3 times a week. And so we go work out together. And he bugged me. He must have asked me 24 times to go to Rotary. I kept on saying no. And then finally, after a year of being asked, I said, okay, I'll go, just so he would stop asking me. But I went. I loved it. Instantly, I knew more people at the grocery store, things like that. But that story taught me something. It taught me that you have to be persistent. And thanks to Brad, he's helped me he brought in me and I brought in others, and that's how it works. So when you get a new member, you really need to celebrate them. When I have people, and you don't have to do it the way I did it, and since you're a Zoom call, you could just have a picture of them and you could have that be the opening slide of the day or the closing slide. My club, when it was meeting in person and somebody was visiting, I would just make a foam core board and I'd put it on an easel. And I'd say, welcome our new member, or our potential member. When they joined, I'd put the thing up again. And then I found out that people really like those, because some people would say, hey, can I have that? I want to mail it to my mom. This big poster of this. So it really works. I put this gentleman in here because this was a little bit of a strange story. I was in the line with Andrew, my son, who's an interactor at the local high school. But I was wearing my pin, and we were picking up burritos at Chipotle, and this young gentleman asked me about this pin and was asking me all about Rotary, and he ended up joining. So that's somebody I just met in Chipotle. So you just never know where the leads are going to come, but that's why you always got to be thinking about it. It's always got to be on your mind. This is my dear friend, Peter Kelly. Do you know him, Chris-Ann?
I do.
Okay, so Peter refused to join Rotary at the first ask because he was pretty busy and his wife was failing, his kids were busy. You know, that's one of the things we compete with, real life. So I asked Peter to be a host parent, and he said, sure, absolutely. And then right after that, he joined Rotary, and he's, you know, been head of youth exchange for us. So, you know, it's really easy to ask the folks that already know about Rotary. So at first they're like, I don't know, it sounds like a cult, whatever. But if they find out something about Rotary, and this is why you're going to see in the next few slides, there are people that are related to Rotary, but they just haven't been asked to join, or they didn't know about it. But once they get to know about it, then you could ask them. So host parents are a really good target, especially for your. And when someone joins or is about to join, ask them to have their spouse join too. These are a couple of my friends. She was interested in joining. I said, bring your husband too. And they did. So you get 2 for the price of 1. And we gave them a discounted fee. We have a family discount for people in the same family. And then it's really good to ask. I know everyone says they focus on a certain, you know, we have to have a certain gender. We have to have a certain race, or we have to have someone young, or we have to have whatever. I'm of the opinion that we should invite everyone, because everyone's got gifts to offer. And I think a lot of time, especially when membership is going down in North America, we say we have to get young people, which is true. But if you ask retired people to join, sometimes they have different resources and they jump right in. They have sometimes more time, they sometimes have more money. Don't want to have gross overgeneralizations here, but they really are hard workers and want to join. So don't forget about them. And ask former members, you know, if you go in, are you guys on Club Runner?
Kirk. Yes, we are. We are.
Okay. So if you go into Club Runner, you could actually look who your former members are too. So if you've had, and that might not be true so much with your club, but you can get a list of people from Rotary. You know what you can do in all your areas? You can make a member request form, fill out a data information form and say, we're trying to grow our club. We would like information from people in Colorado, people in Richfield. And then you can, you know, go through those lists and try to get them, or ask other clubs in your area if you wouldn't mind getting their inactive list and call them. The woman on the left, who's very active in our club now, she had a big job with Wells Fargo. She was head of HR for like the whole country, and she just didn't have time, so she quit after a while. So she rejoined. That gentleman in the middle, he was busy, but he rejoined when we asked him to. So again, low-hanging fruit. So you have to be out there and you have to be doing things. I just took a picture of this. It was pouring down rain in our little town this year. I was ahead of the 4th of July parade, and they always have this joke that it never rains on 4th of July during the parade, but it did. But I thought it would be fun to, everyone to pick their favorite saying, and we just put it on a board and we marched in the parade together. And we didn't have to do that, but it's amazing when you do things like this, people see you and they ask about it. So, you have to be out there and you got to promote your club, but it doesn't have to be hard. It could be fun. And again, I like the personal ask. But again, social media does help. When you post, I put a Facebook post up and a friend of mine said, yeah, tell me about this Rotary. Sounds like fun. So that works too. If you can make your meetings family friendly, that helps a whole lot. And what do I mean by family friendly? I mean, you can tell people, you could tell them that you welcome, children at their events. It's just as easy if you have a meeting at a country club, why don't you have a meeting at a park? That's free. You could bring in some kind of barbecue, you could have bingo, you could have games for the kids, especially stuff like balls and frisbees that they can play with. You can, so many times in Rotary, you have one person who's involved, and then we all love Rotary, so we get super involved. And then sometimes we don't bring our family along to those events. But you could have family events just as easy, even if you're in a traditional setting, at a traditional time and place, you could still make it family friendly. Like near the holidays, we have a holiday party, and I play Santa Claus, and my son plays the elf, which worked pretty well when he was 8. Now he's about 6 foot tall, but he's 15, but he still likes to play the elf, and the little kids like it, and he likes it. But I was asked to talk about this particular subject at the International Convention, the virtual one we had in July. And I did research on a bunch of clubs around the world. And I found one in England called Maidenhand Bridge. And it was fascinating to me because they didn't meet on a Monday or Tuesday through Thursday or Friday. They met every first and third Sunday at a coffee shop. And then all the members brought their partners and spouses with them, and they brought their kids. So the adults would play bridge and the kids would all play together. I mean, we can make it fun. We don't have to do it like we always have done. The 2000 council legislation allowed us some flexibility in the format, times, and places of our meetings. So we can do that. And then I know I've been talking a long time, but the other thing is you got to realize there is no finish line. And, it's so, when you talk to traditional clubs, some of my friends will say, Tom, I like my club just the way it is. I like to meet my friends and sit at the same table and meet with them. But, clubs are going to lose some people by nutrition. If somebody gets sick or they can no longer come or they move or they take a different job. But don't stop recruiting, because you don't know what kind of energy you can have by bringing a new member in and what kind of resources they can bring. So there is no finish line. So I'd be glad to take any kind of questions, and I didn't want to give you too many tips, but those are the ones that I think would help the most.
Tom, you have my head spinning. I just have so many thoughts, and I hope some people on this call will join me and maybe have a brainstorming session, because this is such a great topic. So please unmute yourself and put your hand up and ask Tom whatever question you'd like to ask. Greg.
Tom, I've not been a Rotarian for 20 years. Does Rotary still have categories? And second question is, you use an acronym that began with T, like TRP or something like that. Could you tell me what that stands for?
Absolutely. And it's a good thing that you were a Rotarian, and it's a good thing that you took a break, because now your mind is fresh and you can think of new ways to recruit people in. The TRF, I'm sorry for using acronyms. I hate when people do it, but I was at a grants meeting earlier today. TRF is the Rotary Foundation. And so we have Rotary International, which is we're members of, but we're also members of the Rotary Foundation, which is the money that we use for global and district grants. So we give money to this Rotary Foundation, and then the money comes back to us 3 years later. And you know, the funny thing is, I can speak all day long, but if you don't actually do something with it, it doesn't help. So I'm really glad to hear Chris Ann saying that her mind is spinning. And you know, the first time I gave a talk similar to this, and I said A is for architect, a lady took out her phone and started doing, and I was like, um, I don't know why I did it, and I usually don't. I would never call anybody out. I said, ma'am, what are you doing with your phone? And she says, oh, my brother-in-law is an architect, and I never thought of asking him to join Rotary. So if any of you want to take out your phone, I won't. But it does make a difference. You know, just start thinking about it. Yeah.
Any other questions? Actually, Lindy, I have you in my eyesight because I would love to work with you on membership if you have any interest in that. You've been in this club a long time, and I'd love to pick your brain with that if you have any interest. That's not a resounding yes.
I'm just thinking because I'm trying to start my business. Well, I'm trying to get chartered for my business right now, but that is my personality. I love inviting people to things, and I am a connector, so it feels like a natural fit. But I also don't want to overpromise and become overwhelmed. I'm also on the death and dying committee at my local worship place, and so I don't know what that means as well. And so yes, I would love to do this, but I also want to be cautious of not overpromising and then doing a bad job for everybody.
No, you know what? I'll follow up with you and we'll see if
Okay.
You know, I think it's great to have everybody have a job because, you know, one thing we found out is, you know, people, like I said, don't want to join unless they're engaged. And if there's one person thinking about it, then it wouldn't be a lot of work, Linda. You could just be the one that schedules the once a quarter deal where we have new membership day. Or maybe it's when we have District 5960 or the zone has membership, you know, the classes they call it training, and I hate that word because you train animals, you educate people. But when they have the education classes, it would be great just to know who in the club to send to. So, and really, and no disrespect to anyone, but I think the membership chair is the most important person in any club. And I tell the people in the district, it's not the district governor that's important, it's the membership chair, because if we don't have people, nothing gets done. We don't get the service done, we don't raise money, we don't have more smiling faces in our club.
Yeah.
And people are honored when you ask. They really are. They're like, I'm honored that you asked me to be a part of your club, because you wouldn't ask somebody who you didn't want to see all the time.
Oh, that's just so true.
Yeah.
When Steph told me that she had had an interaction with you, you know, that you had met socially, she remembers an email that you sent her. You did a follow-up with her. I mean, you know, it's just these little steps that are so easy to do and are easy to forget.
Yeah. And I remember the email. I don't know why, but I remember it. And it was basically saying, I really like my club. You know, it's really cool. I get to hear the mayor gives a speech every once in a while, what's going on in the city. And, you know, we have the school superintendent and we have this, but most of all, people are just really friendly and we're really welcoming. It's just like, I think my club's a lot like your club. When I came on, I instantly felt at ease, and people, they don't get clicky at tables. They just kind of talk to you. And who wouldn't want more friends? I mean, it's a crazy world. And the crazy thing is, you know, RI broke a record last year in its 150-year history. It brought in more Rotarians than it ever has done in the past. But it broke another record, and unfortunately, it's not a good one. It lost more members than it ever did, and that number was greater than the first number. So it's like a revolving door. And I think what it is when you go to enough clubs, you realize that they're not changing. I mean, in order to change, you know, there's three ways to grow Rotary, right? You could either grow the members in your club, you could retain the members you have, or you can start a new club. I've thought about it a lot. That's the only three ways. The first two might seem the easiest, but they're the hardest because, you know, my club has been around for 35 years. My wife's club's been around for 65 years. Some clubs have been around for 100 years. They do the same thing. They have 4 business meetings every Tuesday, 7:30 a.m. Da, 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 da. Why not have a social at one time? Why not have a service project? Why not go to Lindy's new business if she's got a renting an office? Why not one of the clubs that we give to a food shelf? Why not go unpack the boxes? Why not do that stuff? And why not have a meeting at a bar, in the middle of the week instead of a Tuesday morning? But to change those meetings, and you think it's easy, change the time, change the place. I mean, we go to these places you have to pay for, like country clubs. Why not go to a place of worship? Rotary's non-religious, I realize that, but a place of worship that's free, or a park that's free, or but why is that so hard? Because to change that club, you have to change the culture, and to change the culture, you have to change the people. And believe me, that's really, really hard. But to start a club, it's easy because you just ask them, where do you want to have your meetings? What time do you want to do? What do you want to talk about? And and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit off track here with starting new clubs, but it's kind of a passion of mine because I've seen clubs that we started, and I think yours fits into this. We call them cause-based clubs. Like I started the Veterans Club, like Chrisanne talked about. Earlier last year, we started the End Human Trafficking Club. Why did that start? Because there was a initiative 3 years ago in my district, and it spread to the district to the north and the district to the south, which is your district, 5960. And we were doing good things. We were having summits, things like that. Well, the lady of the initiative said, I'm quitting Rotary. And I said, Karen, why are you quitting Rotary? And she said, we have a champion in every club, but every time we go to ask for a speaker, we might get one speaker on the topic of end human trafficking, or we might get one district grant. But then every meeting after that, we go back to our other great causes like literacy or, freshwater wells in Honduras. And she says, we want to focus on this. I said, Karen, start a new club. Oh, that's going to be hard. It wasn't hard. I told her it wasn't going to be hard. We all pitched in. We got it done in a few months. And now they have members all over the world. And it's funny because a few weeks ago, we were at a meeting, and I still like to go to the meetings because they're real nice people. And I saw there was a new country, Turkey, on there. And I thought, that's pretty cool. This lady who's a school teacher, she teaches English as a second language in Turkey. She joined this club. Right after that meeting, like an hour after, I got an email from Rotary International, our past president, Mark Maloney. And he said, well, how'd you get my sister to join Rotary? I've been trying for 41 years to get her to join Rotary, and she wouldn't join. Why? Because we didn't have a club that suited her needs. See, your club suits a need. I've never heard of all the research I've done. Whenever I have to speak, I try to do research. I've never heard of a club like yours that focuses on the enthusiasts of youth exchange. And youth exchange is such a big deal. And it's, if you ever heard my club talk, and poor Agnes had to hear it a few times, I start about my Rotary story. And I talk about, I'm not going to talk about it now because it'll take too much time and I'll get too emotional, but it's all about youth exchange. All these kids who came to live with us and they become a part of our family. And we don't tap it. I mean, you guys are tapping it, but I've never seen any other club like this around. So if you got the word out, I think it's going to be huge. And I'll start spreading the word for you when I'll use you as a shining example. I just wish I would have thought about it earlier.
Thank you, Tom. That's just so great. You and your family, you've hosted kids. I want to ask you before we wrap up, how is Paco doing?
Paco just finished his first year at the University in Valencia, and he is actually majored in engineering. And now his younger brother, Danny, wants to do exchange here in Minnesota. Yeah.
Good. I hope we can get him.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you on the exchange board? Youth exchange board?
Ma'am. Yeah, we have a meeting at 7, so I can tell you
Today?
more. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, sorry.
I have a meeting at 7 my time. Your same time as me, right?
I'm an hour behind, but everyone else on here, it's your time.
Okay. Yeah, we have a meeting at 7. I have another meeting at 6.
Oh my gosh. That's what the DG lifestyle is all about.
But I tell you, this is the most fun I had all day.
Anyone else have any more questions for Tom?
Yeah, Tom, just a real quick question. So if we ask our friends to consider joining, do we have to worry about classification or no?
You really don't. Rotary still has classifications, but there's no requirement that you can't have 2 of the same classification. I actually wanted, when I was an assistant district attorney in Georgia, I wanted to join Rotary in the worst way. It's about 25 years before I joined Rotary, but they said I couldn't because I was assistant district attorney and my boss, she was the district attorney, and they had that classification law enforcement filled. So for 20 years, I didn't do Rotary. So now I'm trying to get it out of my system now, make up for lost time.
Yeah, that's so archaic. We don't need that.
Nope.
You know, when it comes to classifications, you can get real creative there too. I made up at out of Portland one time, and that's quite a logging and lumber industry. And there was one fellow, his classification was in plywood interior. The other guy was plywood exterior. So I told him I wanted to meet the 2x4s and the 4x4s.
That's great. I love that.
Well, you know what? I'm going to review your presentation. We have it recorded. It'll be on Facebook because I wanted to look at the reasons why people join and what they like about Rotary. And I remember Tom Thorfordson spoke to us a few months ago, and he referred to a survey as well. And the young people who joined Rotary wanted to join to do something, to leave a mark, to do
Yes.
something. And this is, I think our club, we need to think about that, about a good social cause or a project, or join another club with a project. No, we're little, we're small, but we've got personalities, we've got enthusiasm, we can do things.
And there is a difference, Chris Ann, between how you and I grew up and the way the kids grow up now, because you and I were told to serve our community. So I like going along Highway 100 and picking up trash with my friends. But the millennials want to have impact, and they want to have impact in one area. And that's why these cause-based clubs are doing so well, because they want to focus on human trafficking. They want to focus on serving vets. They want to focus on the environment. So if you can find a cause that helps. I zoomed in 6 a.m. yesterday morning to a club in Charlotte Harbor, Florida, because their club was declining, and they decided they heard about this veterans club up here, so they wanted to join. And by the end of the day, by the end of my talk, they were all pulling out a piece of paper and writing down names because they decided that was the right thing to do. They're going to change their club into a cause-based club by having that. And it just makes sense. The community's full of veterans, but they just never thought about it until just recently.
Yeah, congratulations. That's been a very successful club. Well, thank you, Tom, so much for giving us your time today. You gave such great information. Yes, if you can unmute, and let's give Tom a round of applause.
Well done. Very well done.
I'll give it back to all the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. Next week, again, Lisa Nerver will be our speaker, and she is the Rotex coordinator for the North Star Youth Exchange Program. We will hear what Rotex is up to. And before we adjourn, let us do the four-way test. I don't have it to pull up. I don't know, Kirk, if you have it to pull up, but is it in our heads? Can we do it?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Of the things we think, say, and do, is it the
Is it
truth?
the truth?
Is it
Is
fair
it
to all
fair to all
concerned?
concerned? Will it build goodwill and better
relationships?
friendships? Will it be beneficial to all
All
concerned?
Awesome. Thank you guys for attending
Okay.
today. Tom, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good meeting.
So
See you next
It was very fun. Thank you.
Bye, guys.